Interesting chat today, lads, with Longford's Mickey Quinn. He looked to flog some menswear suits. He talked about nappy changing tactics and about how he does his cooking. Damien, what did you enjoy the most?
His insights from the professional game were pretty fantastic. But for me, the standout had to be just the insight that he had, or the kind of the thought process he had to just take lads that he's teaching in school at the moment with PE and stuff, to put time to use at the moment and get them learning some cooking skills. I thought that was just a fantastic thing. I know it's something you do yourself, Murph, from time to time too, but I think that's a pretty cool thing for a teacher, a PE teacher, or anyone to be bringing skills to young fellas.
Shane, from a couple of weeks ago, hearing about gyms all the way out in Tramore to hearing about GPS pods in Australia. What surprised you the most this week?
I know. I'm getting nice geography education here. It was mainly like his insights into his time with the AFL, like from a strength and conditioning point of view, were mind-blowing considering it was in 2008, and it's stuff that we're only really seeing in Gaelic and soccer really now, and he was doing it 12 years ago.
Yeah, really interesting as well how they seem to look into the backgrounds of the players, their families, their support systems now. Not just see physically who's the best, but who is the best fit for us, our group, all like that. Everyone, up next then is Longford's former Essendon's Mickey Quinn. Mickey, a PE teacher in Longford that works for or is an ambassador for Benetti Menswear, must just be praying that Debs will be back on soon so you can start flogging suits to the 6 years, what?
I'm getting enough stick about that now. That's the past. I think I'm selling nappies and baby strollers. That I'm heading into that brand now. 2 minutes on the clock, 2.5 minutes on the clock, I think, is my record for a nappy change now. So times are changing. Couldn't be putting on a suit and doing that.
and do you have the polar heart rate monitor on while you're changing nappies?
Through the roof.
No, great to have you on today. You've an interesting enough background there, obviously, with all the football, but having spent a few years playing Aussie rules, coming back and going doing the teaching degree then and getting further and further into that. Do you want to just take us through how, kind of from playing football first, you ended up going out to Australia, and it was Essendon you played with, wasn't it?
Yeah, Essendon Bombers, that's what they were called, and as soon as I arrived I was called the Irish Bomber. So yeah, you can imagine when it comes to the bit of casual racism and bits and pieces like that, the Australians are great for it. But yeah, I started off playing soccer. Mainly soccer and Gaelic were the two sports that I was kind of big into. Kennedy Cup under 13, got asked to go to Dublin to play with Bohemians, and I ended up giving that a miss the following year, and 2 years later I played with Bohemians under 15, and then moved on to took a year out for the Leaving Cert. And then I think it was played under 17, under 18, whatever way it was working. And I was back in college in Dublin doing civil engineering in Bolton Street. So I thought, right, I'm going to be in Dublin. I'll keep the soccer on and I'll focus in on that, and I'll give Gaelic a break. So I was kind of to and fro from one thing to the next. There was times there where we were playing for 6-7 different teams. So I started with the soccer. I wasn't going to play Gaelic at all. Got involved with the college freshers, and they asked me to play, and I was like, oh right, go on. Started playing with them. Don't tell the soccer crowd. It was very much hush hush. Then I got asked to play for the DIT, the Sigerson team, while I was a fresher, and I was like, geez, some of these lads were the big step up. Like, that's almost nearly at senior level. I was only gone 18 in January. So I gave that a miss, but then the county minors was still going at the time. So you'll only have to come to the games was how that started. Then it was like, I should come down, and then all of a sudden you're training flat out. I'm back involved, and from that year playing minor football with Longford, I got asked to go for a trial down in Limerick at the time. So there was a good crew of lads from Clare, Limerick, Longford, Westmeath. There was all over the place, and from that 2 of us got picked to go to Australia for a 2-week trial. So that was in August. I was working with my dad as a carpenter at the time, so he was working down in Tullamore, so I was getting calls in the middle of the day. I was like, look, your man's calling me, I'm off here, so you're at the back of a building site on the phone to Australia. I said, right, I'm not around in 2 weeks' time, I'm gone, I'm going to Australia. So packed the bags, sun cream, the whole lot, shorts, arrived out to Melbourne and middle of winter, and I was like, they're staying in the bag. So it was as naive as you come. So jumped on a plane, 24-hour flight with another guy from Ian Ryan from Limerick was his name, and 2-week trial went well, and said, look, if you're interested, would you be interested in signing a contract? So I said, look, I'll have a chat with my family when I get home. I said, look, this is an opportunity that I always wanted to play professional sport. So I was like, yeah, look, it's a 2-year contract. Give it a lash for the 2 years, see what happens, and go from there. And yeah, that was how it all came about. And then I spent 3 years out there. First year was just a whirlwind. Arrived in November, starting November. You had an 8-week block to Christmas, and you knew you were getting home for 2 weeks at Christmas. So it was right, 8 weeks of training, grand, can do that. Back after Christmas, and I think you're into another... there's probably another 2-3 months of pre-season. So pre-season is about 5 months in AFL, and you're like, that's where the graw for the grind and the slogging came from. And yeah, I've made my debut round 2 and have the record for that, and kind of holding on to it, because in one sense, looking back, making your debut that quick, it's probably not a good thing. That you get a taste for it and you think, yeah, but there's probably a lot of other areas. You're still only a teen, really. So you had a lot to learn. But 2 games.
So
6
that record is you've the shortest time as a professional player to go from like not playing at all to playing in professional game, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Marty Clark had the record before that. I don't know, was he round 6 or 16, or I'm not sure exactly. So round 2 it was like straight in, and that came, manager just threw me in at the deep end, and sink or swim, and it kind of had been going well in pre-season, training wise. Things just clicked at one stage. One of the coaches that I was working with just pulled me aside and said, look, I was probably being too safe with everything I done, that you're trying to, just do this, listening from all different angles, and trying to take everyone on board. And he said, just go out and play, just pretend you're playing back home. And I think that's what makes the Irish guys do well. You've been called out there for a reason, and because of what you've been doing, playing your own sport. What happens, I found, is you start to change. You get very structured on percentages and passing accuracy, and you get caught up on that side of things. Whereas when you're actually taking the game on and playing it as you see, Conor McKenna, Zach Toohey, all these guys, they're the ones that kind of thrive or do the best, because they're using what they learned playing Gaelic football to help them at another sport. Otherwise, you're behind the 8 ball the whole time, competing against guys that have played this game since they're 5 years old.
Interesting there, the way you said you came from a soccer background. First of all, you must have said something really enticing, because Shane hasn't left yet, even though he's probably one of Shamrock Rovers' biggest fans and absolutely hates Bohemians, and you had a season or two there.
I'm surprised it's not St. Patrick Athletic.
Go on again, Shane?
You went on to greener pastures, so it's essentially saying that everything was better than playing for Bows. That's how I'm taking it anyway. And so, Mike, that's going to be the tagline for the podcast, so just bear with us on that.
Yeah, no, in fairness, I've never played against Bows, against Rovers underage, whatever way that they hadn't, it was a different league or something, whatever way things were structured back then. But it's amazing how quickly 5-10 years things change in the league, especially with Irish soccer teams. Could be your Droghed's, Dundalk's up at the top, and then following 5 years there could be down the second division, just the way things are working with the Irish Soccer League. Yeah,
it's madness, especially kind of, I'd say back from when you were playing, like there's a huge difference in who the top teams are.
Definitely.
Mad little merry-go-round.
The soccer The soccer background is interesting, that you'd kind of expect that it would nearly have to be Gaelic football because the handling skills are so important. But at the same time, I've seen like Dara Joyce, who's just across the river from me, like he's made it from a predominantly hurling background, bar a little bit of Gaelic football in secondary school. So like just the general athleticism seems to be a big thing. And like even have you noticed since, if Aussie rules look to branch into many other sports other than Gaelic football?
Yeah, they've recruited a few basketballers, they've recruited from a few different areas. I think what they've started looking at now is they're more so looking at the background, the players' family background and their social and psychological side of things when they're recruiting guys anymore. Because I think the big thing is, oh geez, he's a gun basketballer or Gaelic player, let's get him. And then they bring them out and they invest all this time in getting a player out, but they probably don't have the support structure around them from an early age to cope in that environment. And probably looking back on it for myself, like I was very lucky to have that support with family and everything here, and the family that I ended up living with was a family from Tyrone, a host family, and that was massive for my first couple of years out there. But you probably do find that you're in the heel of the hunt. That's what kind of happened to me, that I didn't really have that network away from the club. That, you know, my reason for playing Gaelic football now is that your family can go and watch and they get as much joy out of it as you watching you play, and that'll be my reason for playing. Whereas when you're kind of playing the other side of the world and a couple of days later your mum or dad might get looking at clips or videos or reading comments, and it's not the same thing. Whereas that idea coming home from a pitch and having a chat and there's that same buzz after a game, that was something that I was missing. And obviously contract didn't get renewed, and probably could have been looking at going to another club or going a different direction, because in my second year I played 2 AFL games, but I got named best and fairest for the second team. So player of the year for the second team, you almost think, you know, right, I should be on here for a good third year, but management changed. Got offered another rookie contract. Looking back, probably should have been getting a 2 or 3 year contract, I would have thought, on the senior list. But because you were a previous manager's project player, I would see it as you kind of fall out of favour a little bit, and little things like that. You look back and you're kind of thinking ifs and buts, and you know, but obviously home a long time now, and happy to be too.
It just shows how like managers' preferences or new managers want to put a stamp on things. It's universal. Like that's in Gaelic football, it's in hurling, it's in soccer, rugby, everything.
Oh yeah, you look at your soccer teams, you know, you look at your Harry Redknapp coming round, and I think there's definitely a few players that have followed him to a few different clubs.
Pat Dolan probably did the same thing in League of Ireland for about 12 years there.
I need a holding midfielder, bring him.
Is there any, I suppose, with the crossover there, Mikey, just from coming from Ireland, is there, for that Aussie rules dynamic, is there like certain positions or areas of the pitch that they take Gaelic players because they're an asset here because X, Y and Z, or is it just their general all over athleticism that makes it come through?
I think they're kind of starting to learn and change things a little bit now too, that the initial thinking with it all is put them in the half-back line. Half-back line, you can attack the play, everything's happening in front of you, you see what's happening, it's linear, it's one directional. And that's where most players should kind of, it's an easier way of learning the game. But probably for me, I found myself, I was always a full forward, minor the whole way up, full forward, striker, that was my position. And then I found when I went to Australia, I found that, Jesus, I have an engine here, I can run, I'm quick and I can run, have a decent fitness level. Since coming back, that was it, you're out around the middle here, you're fit, that's where you needed. But out there, I think that's kind of the pigeonhole you into that position, and maybe move up to a wing. Whereas I think Conor McKenna for a while done a stint as a kind of Roman small forward is what they kind of call it, and I done the same. And you know, that bit of whether it be the jink or the dummy and finding yourself in space, I think it's an area that the Irish won't be able to do that. But you know, there's a lot more to that players have. Even kicking around the corner, snapping goals, that a lot of a lot of good players can kind of adapt to that role as in AFL as well.
And you mentioned there about the AFL pre-season being particularly long, can be up 5 months nearly. Is that because, just like my own limited knowledge, that say if you look at GPS stuff in Gaelic football, you're kind of talking 9, 10, maybe upwards of 12k, like at a very higher level of Gaelic football match, whereas that'd be really low for an AFL game. You're talking 14, 16, potentially plus. Is the pre-season so long just to like spend the time preparing lads for those demands?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, like I remember, I think 16 or 18k is coming up in my head for a game that I done the most that I might have covered, and like that was kind of, and then to recover from that and go out the following week. But I suppose the different thing is that you're kind of training, or with the interchange, that you get the rest. You can, you come off, you get 2 minutes, and then you go again. And I think with the GPS, the big thing that they try and emphasize is meters per minute. Like I know from the international rules, and Nicholas Walsh there, that was meters per minute was massive. Whereas Gaelic football, in fairness, it is high. You could, I don't know, you're talking 120, 140, depending on position and stuff like that. But they could be up near 160, 180. Because of that interchange, you can come off and go on again and really blow it out. And midfielders are kind of, midfielders, wingers would have the most rotations or interchange in a game because of the position that they have. So look, I probably found, and even from chatting to yourselves, like the GPS, the heart rate, the data, the stats, probably the math side of things that I would have had an interest in, just you get too caught up in it when it's like, just play ball, just go out. And that was an area that I found myself that, okay, whether it be, you're weighing in at this today, your weight was this, you got this many touches, your percentage disposal was this, your distance covered, your max speed, and you're looking at all these numbers, and you kind of get engrossed in that side of things. Whereas at the end of the day, what's the sole purpose is to perform to the best of your ability. All that kind of stuff isn't really isn't key to performing. So you might have some better targets or more appropriate targets, but I find myself heading down that road a lot.
Was all that stuff there straight away? Like as soon as it was 08 you went over first, like did they have GPS heart rate monitors immediately, or did you notice it kind of coming in? Because it was nearly 6 or 8 years later when it really, you see it coming in over here.
No, it would have been in, like that's what I found with Australia was sports science was, like sports science I think in AFL was running AFL before anything else. Like the sports side of things was massive, and that was dictating coaching and dictating training, whereas I think they've got a better balance now. Like the GPS was there, the RPEs before training, even I think the 2 out of the 3 years there was cortisol testing twice a week, or once a week, sorry. Drooling into...
That's looking at recovery, is it?
Yeah, just drooling into saliva into a cup, and then from that to be able to turn around and measure it and say, right, your stress hormone is high. And there's been a few times they're like, oh Jesus, such and such is after doing a hammy, look back and it's like, oh, that cortisol level had jumped up, like they hadn't been probably picked up on in time. So things like that, but that was enjoyable, the recovery side of things, and the side of things that probably wouldn't have been big, and it's still kind of improving and changing here at the moment.
And because there was so much put on like the sports science or the performance metrics in that 5 month or so pre-season, was training set up to reflect a lot of that, or was a lot of it like football or Aussie rules football was based, or was it very physical based?
So the way the layout was for pre-season was Monday morning training at 9 o'clock. You'd arrive normally an hour before training. Training would be a big pitch session with kind of drill based sessions, maybe 4v2 tackle squares, different things, kicking drills. Session could last an hour and a half, an hour and 45. Then off the pitch, recovery shake, ice baths, and then you'd have a flexibility session and then lunch. Then after lunch there could be some meetings and a gym session, and then a massage in the evening. Then the gyms was it 3, 4 and 5, and then massage afterwards, and then home. That was your big day. Tuesday kind of half day, so you'd be into maybe 1 o'clock in the club, but it was a running session, so probably a lot of the runs that I'm doing at the moment would have came from there, kind of based off time per hundreds, so it could be 4 800s, 12 400, stuff like that, putting in, and your rests and recovery was all based around basically your heart rate, and to kind of turn around. The groups were laid out A, B, C, D, E and F, based off fitness tests. So group A, I think the group A was the least fittest, and then as you go up the groups, the seconds per 100 were, the times were shortened and the rest times were shortened. So after doing a couple of sessions, you'd look at your heart rate when you cross the line, and the S&C coach should take some figures and say, right, do you know what, you're going to move up next week onto the next group because you're fine, you're making these times fine, and the heart rate isn't through the water. They could see that you're not struggling.
That's very similar to the way a lot of teams, I'd use it anyway with mass. You do your 1K and you put lads in groups based off that. It's very similar to that, but just I suppose a simplified version of it.
It is, and I suppose it's a lot easier to simplify it when you have time on your hands for a pre-season that long. Like when you're talking about doing a running session like that could take 45, 50 minutes of a training session, and you haven't touched the football, you don't have the time in GA to be doing that. So you're trying to manage your time as best you can. But basically Monday, Wednesday and Friday were the same. Thursday could be a boxing half day, team meetings in the morning, tactics and stuff like that. And then Saturday, just to really finish you off on a Saturday, it could be a fartlek running session or a similar running session to the Tuesday. But I remember doing, I think it's Princess Park or the Tan in Melbourne, where we done a session one Saturday morning and done a block of runs. There was 800s, 400s, 200s, massive block of runs, and right, we're finished now, great. Right lads, this is where, you're coming to the last 10 minutes in the game. This is where I said, don't start this, I know what's coming here. We're going on a fartlek. Fartlek run, the park was, I think it was 3k around the park. Right, we're off at 8 out of 10, back down to 4, and there was coaches set up at maybe different points around the oval or the park, and in you go. Right, we're grappling on the ground for 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, up you get, we're on to the next, we're doing boxing at the next station. I remember sitting on a shower floor for about an hour when I got home. I was like questioning everything. I was like, right, it's the weekend, yes, great weekend, and I was like, not fit to move. This is just, I've never, that was when you're like, you kind of think you're pushing yourself, or you have more left in the tank, or that was it. That was breaking point now. But like that, when you get to those sessions, you always remember those ones that, like, oh jeez, do you remember that time? Yeah.
Some serious soul searching, I'd say there, alright.
When you're looking at yourself just after a shower like that and you're barely able to do anything, it was like, right, what's next week going to be? It's like a bit like, I'll ring into work now, I'm not in the humour, I'm not feeling training. Next week you're like what do I do? Yeah. I'm a bit sore. Yeah, tough shit.
So is everyone else.
But it gave you an appreciation for, I think I probably would maintain and probably saying that lads or people can kind of push themselves to train hard, and you're training hard, but a lot of people are probably stuck at that 80% capacity, that there's definitely 20% more in a lot of people. Like if you said to people, have you actually ran that hard that you've got sick? And I was not talking about getting sick from a drinking session the night before, like just that pure empty the tank kind of next level. And it's not too often that you count it on one hand when you've been that fatigued or that pushed, but it just shows you that there's always that little bit more, and that you can reach that bit further than you think you can.
I suppose, is there anything that you saw during your time over there that you thought that would really suit GAA but it hasn't shown up here, or have you kind of seen the GAA has really kind of caught up to that type of level of maybe analysis of training and planning for training, or what are your views on it?
Yeah, both sides. Like, probably my thing at the moment, and I'm kind of, it's like my little project is it's the individual skills. I think all the study and research at the moment is small-sided games. How important is small-sided games, 7-a-side, 11-a-side? They're great, and for all ages the whole way through. But what I think even Gaelic football is missing across the board is you need a certain level of basics before you can even go into your 2v2, your 3v3, your 5v5 and so on, that everyone skips the kind of skill side of things and goes straight in, small-sided games, that's what we're told to do. Small-sided games, you have an under 8 team, 7v7, that's fine, that's a small-sided game, that's okay. But 14 lads, one ball, 14 boys and girls, one ball thrown out there, there's going to be a dominant one on both sides. They're the ones going to touch the ball the most, the others are falling behind. Whereas I think the individual skills, everyone having a ball and making drills or fun games around that okay, a ball against the wall, single hand takes, through the legs, round the back, all that kind of stuff is skipped. Like, even you go the whole way up to senior level. The hand passing is probably the most underappreciated skill in Gaelic football. I maintain that if a good hand pass will set you up for a goal or will miss a goal chance, someone running past you on the shoulder, maybe 10 yards away, and you're able to hit a hand pass out to that person into space and they get through for goal. You miss that hand pass, you don't really see what happens. It breaks down and lost the ball. But everyone kind of just says, it went up to the other end of the pitch. But a lot of it is a breakdown in a skill that hasn't been trained. And that's right through to senior level. So I love that side of things, the one-to-one, the skill coaching, and not going into really specific technique. It's more so touch. I think touch. And that will be something I've picked up, that before a gym session out there or after a gym session, we say, okay, we'll do a bit of craft work, was what it was called, and you went into a kind of room off from the gym and there's rebounder nets and 45-degree angles, so coach would throw up the ball against it and it'd come down, and you're working on body position, holding out an opponent, so that would be working around your stoppages. How that comes back to Gaelic football, high ball coming into the square, that you're able to hold your man out as a defender or an attacker and take that ball in one hand rather than actually just falls to the ground. Like, it's a skill that's not practiced. I think that if one team with club or county went after high catching and high kicking for a period of time and just really went after it, that could be the way of revolutionising the game. That, okay, well, he's able to leap at it, he's able to bring it down to his advantage, you can create goal scoring chances from that. Whereas it's not really a skill that, I don't think, from what I've seen and experienced, it's not really practice. Kick the ball up high to your partner, he'll catch it. But I mean, one-on-one competing for balls and stuff like that. Like, I look back at Bernard Brogan, their ball goes into him that mightn't be a great ball, but he's very good at his body position, that he can get it to break to his advantage. He mightn't catch it clean in the air, but he'll break it to his favourite side and then can attack it from there. Whereas they're skills that I don't think they're not really counted as skills in Gaelic football, and they're not really practiced. So that element I enjoy, and I think there's loads of scope from a coaching and a playing point of view to really hone in on things like that. And the new mark, that kick pass inside 45 and going for the mark now, there's more reason to do it.
You see a lot of that in players who have a basketball background, and I feel that's where the AFL gets a big time, because there's a lot, like from my time in Australia, basketball was much bigger in Australia than I ever thought it was. So there is a lot more crossover, and you'd see even the build of players. Like when I went over, I kind of assumed they'd be taking the same strategy as GA has over the last few years, where they'd be bigger, kind of smaller, stocky fellas, but like everyone's about 6'4", 6'5", really long limbs, really agile, and it makes such a difference. You can just break things your way, and just shouldering or keeping a person off the ball when you have that like arm span or that size. It's incredible to watch.
It's unreal. Like they're even talking there. I caught the end of Essendon and Hawthorn last week, and they're talking about a guy that's 6'7", which you're talking a ruckman, their position, the guy that does all the tapping. But he won the 3K or 1K time trial. He won the fitness test in the club, and they're saying, okay, he's starting as a fullback or a key defender, but the way he's training and running, he's going to be a midfielder, which is going to revolutionise things. That a 6'7" guy in the midfield, that's unheard of. He's like a second ruckman, so that's going to change the game. So whereas we don't really have that kind of luxury with kind of different sized guys, but it's definitely a different way of thinking.
In a sense, because the clean catch is so like, oh, it looks brilliant, whereas like knocking it to yourself, it's not as eye-catching, or a manager wouldn't say, like if you went to pick someone up from a minor county trial, like a lad who's just knocking it to his side and running onto it again, he doesn't catch the eye in the same way, so you probably don't appreciate it as much as opposed to a lad who'll go up and win a mark, like, oh, that's a great clean catch by him. That, like, maybe that's why it hasn't been pushed as much or adopted, or the players who are good at it aren't maybe as put into dominant positions as much either.
I think so. Like you look at hurling, and if a fella catches a ball clean, he's ready to. There's a fist pump coming afterwards, and a free is usually how hurling goes. And then Gaelic football, you wouldn't know what, a clean catch, and then he just gets excited and kicks the ball away. Like it's not really as common. But you probably don't really see that many clean catches in Gaelic football, or you probably don't appreciate them as much too. Round ball. Like you're thinking Fenton is a great one, Kevin Feely's another one through the middle, but then if you start looking at full forwards or full backs, you're not really seeing that much of it in that area. Whereas ideally, if your team was to change tactics and go a different approach, you could really expose, go long, then teams drop back an extra defender, then you can pick off a running game or shorter passes then. So it's more than the soccer, the high press, the way everyone's playing out of defence now. It's like when you see teams not playing out of defence, you're like, they should be. Whereas where has that came from? Has that came from Gaelic football, or has it came from a different, your Pep or your Bielsa or these kind of managers that have changed scope and looked at things from a different angle?
Yeah, it's really interesting, but as you said there, it's important to have the skill set before you can do any of those. Like if you're trying to put in any kind of like advanced level of tactics, if the players don't have those very basic skills on right and left, it just limits so many possibilities and opportunities from there.
Yeah, like you're throwing in, like, and you see it now, you talk about small sided games, 2v2, 1v1, ideally if you have enough time in your hands, you start 1v1, then 2v2, then 3v3, but no coach is setting up 3v3 games or 2v2 games. It's like right straight into 7v7 is usually, from there is kind of the kind of gauge, and we can keep an eye on 2 games going at once. That's what 28 players training, 7v7, that's manageable. But all the learning with skills and decision making, that comes from the smaller stuff, before going even next or near a 5v5 or 7v7. But and that's the kind of the crux that you're trying to balance things as best you can. But I think even just from experience that you do your most improvement by that 1v1, rather than you find ways round. Like you see players that can't take on the game anymore, that they won't take on the defender 1-on-1, whereas if you go into a game, usually it's 1v2, like every forward is going to be playing against 2 defenders. So if you can't take on a defender 1-on-1 into a bigger game, you're at a loss straight away unless you've got some other trick up your sleeve.
I think we're seeing that kind of hole a bit in professional football more than anything, because I think especially with Pep coming through now, like lads in his backline or even his keeper who don't have those basic skills to his level, he has no problem replacing. Like, even, was it Joe Hart was the first one, where he's like, you're just not good enough with your feet. I know you're a goalkeeper, but I need everyone on my team to be able to pass and to have like the basics of football before they start through.
Exactly. What's the City keeper, Ederson, is it? Like, his ball over the top for Gundogan's goal, where I think someone was playing a high line and he played a ball over the top, and he got an assist from it, and I was like, Jesus, there's not many keepers that could have played a pass like that. You try and throw that into Gaelic football, and I think Kieran McGinney tried it once with he played a defender or someone in goals, but it didn't really pay off. He was kind of coming out, and you see, is it Brody with Leash too? You know, he's been pinned a few times. I think Dublin, he got pinned a few times, but Dublin are your grade A. They'd done their homework. They had analysed him, right? Let him off and tunnel him. Basically send him down a tunnel, and as soon as the brakes come on, there's two guys coming behind. He meets one at the front. His options are covered. Then you get a turnover. Whereas Brody got serious joy against Langford one year, and I think there was someone else where he was just, I think it was a league final, where he just ran the show. And I think that's another area, the keeper, how important the keeper is in soccer, but in Gaelic football too with Cluxton. But the idea in a keeper coming out and getting involved is definitely something that has worked, and it just takes the right manager and right player to fit that style.
You can see similar in hurling now that the goalkeepers need to be so good at picking the short passes for puck-outs as well as just lumping it long. I read Pep Confidential, it tracked his first season at Bayern Munich. Someone just shadowed him for most of the season. How much of it is true, I'm not sure, but if it is true, it was brilliant insights. But he just said he spent a whole pre-season focused on the little passing patterns and the skills and the minute detail around body position. When you receive the ball, you need to be turned like 10
on
degrees more this way.
Receiving it on the back foot.
But even like 10 degrees more this way, so you've opened up 3 more options in front of you. He said, like, there's no point in focusing on fitness, because if they don't have these basic skills and be able to play the way I want to play, there's no point in me working with them at all.
Exactly. Like, I think I read something like that. Was it the back foot, or give it to the on his front foot or past his dominant foot, was like the level of detail that he was saying that, you know, if you were passing Ian Robin, pass it to his left foot, don't pass it to his right foot, and pass it to his back foot that he can turn out as well as go forward, and these kind of things. And you're like, that's next level. That's, you know, there's the ball, go on. Whereas, like, you talk about that, one of the big things, even something so simple that you take home, is cue hands was one of the things in the AFL. It was like, where you want the ball, put your hand up where you want the ball. And it's like, right, if you're running that way, put your hand up, off you go. That's where the ball should be hitting, is that hand out in front. Whereas a few times when you're doing a coaching session, is right, I'm going to run past you here, I'm going to put up my hand, I want you to hit the hand, given a smaller target to hit. You take more care with the pass and it's more accurate. And I think that kind of, with Gaelic football, round ball, hand pass in the summer, it'll bounce, it'll come up to him, just put it out in front. But when you're talking small margins, all those little things start to add up.
And even like when AFL was very sports science based, they still had a very strong belief in a lot of those core skills. Like, he'd have had dedicated skill sessions at various stages in the season. Like, that's very recently come into GA. That would have been a priority for a long time.
Yeah, I see your man, what's his name, Alfred, the kicking coach, worked with Johnny Wilkinson, Johnny Sexton,
Dave Alred.
Yeah, and I know he's worked with Dean Rock a little bit, done a couple of sessions with him. Like, that side of things, that one-on-one coaching that's where it's at, to be honest. When you get to whatever elite level or whatever level there, it can be done because of money or whatever else, but like, the joy that can come from coaching maybe 3 or 4 guys at once, smaller scale, the amount of touches and technical side of things that can be focused on in a session, rather than, right, we're down to training tonight with the club, we're quick warm up, we're into tackle squares, 30 on, 30 off, bait lumps out of each other, and then we'll play a game. Like, it's, you know, there's a fair difference or step up. Like,
Damien is frothing at the mouth there. 30 seconds of baiting, lads.
I feel very attacked. I feel very attacked there.
No, those tackle squares. Yeah, we had some interesting ones, and well, it's funny too. Like one of the other things we would have got from Australia is the best guys, or the guys were always putting up the most mileage at training and games. It's like, how are they doing? What's going on? And then I sat back and watched some of them. And in a training session, it was like they were always the ones that picked the furthest cone away for a drill. The lads that are standing right, manager says, out we go lads into this drill, and there's a line of 10 lads standing at the cone right beside where the manager was talking, and then there's no one over the farthest cone. They were the ones that always run to the furthest one and got the distance up, or done the hardest kind of run and training just to get to that corner, was always at the front. Whereas there's other lads that you'll always know is at the back of the drill. Just like, get a bit of rest here now, I'll just cut in here at the back. There'll be 3 rounds of this drill gone before I have to do anything, and might get in for one blowout, that's it. Like, so it's the same with the tackle squares. 3 or 4 lads into the first square. You look at the first square and you look at the last square. Some lads were great at picking which square they wanted to be in.
And you've been doing a lot you put up on Instagram and Twitter and like that, a lot of the heart rate based training. Is that something you've taken back from Australia, or something you did bits of there, but you've just found out a lot more about it here in Ireland recently?
Yeah, I would have picked it up from there. A couple of running sessions a week that we're using and wearing the heart rate strap. It just gave you a really good insight into when you were training hard, or when even probably the off season or on your own, that when you were asked to do a session, that like, were you actually pushing yourself? Like, I remember trying to do repeat end line to end line Gaelic football pitch, trying to up and down, 20 on 20 off, or whatever it was taking to do the run, and just you had 8 reps to do of whatever distance. So I was looking at the heart rate and I was like, Jesus, have it up here 198. I was like, I'll break, I'll get the 200, I'll hit the 200 when I was in my peak. And I was like, bang out 2 or 3 more, and then you're like, nah, it's not going anywhere, that's it, I better stop here. So you kind of, that side of things, it kind of intrigued me that, right, just because the heart rate's high doesn't mean it's a good thing or a bad thing. You're trying to train or see different zones and stuff like that. And I would have learned a lot more since then that, it's not about going all out and getting the highest heart rate as possible, and trying to train in the lower zones to work on your aerobic base and your anaerobic base that little bit higher, and kind of little bouts here and there. So that's something that I have a huge interest in. Probably haven't done any degree or masters in it, but you're kind of, the fact that you're young and fit and healthy and you can experience it and try it yourself, I find it's all well and good looking at the data of someone else, but when you're doing it yourself, I think it's a great way of learning what works for you. But then you can actually see, if you do go to, when you're finished playing, that you go to do some kind of training or that at a later date, coaching or S&C, that you have that base, or and understand a lot more about it.
And you were saying you often look at it, see how high can I get it, but you've learned a bit more now that there's benefits from the lower down stuff. Like, you aim for a cardiac output session around once a week or that, would you?
Yeah, like in one of the programs that I would have got from, he's in Owen Maguire, and I've actually Exos course that he would have been trained up through it, and I've signed up myself, and I'm doing it, well, Easter, we might open it then, but I'm trying to train up on that. But yeah, it was something, he gave me a program when I decided not to go back in with Longford this year, for that, what it was, probably there was a 2 or 3 month window there in the lead up to Christmas, and I got an 8-10 week program off him that I was following, and there was a cardiac output session on the bike, just spin the legs out, that was kind of a recovery but a cardiac output session, and I found, Jesus, after the tough week, it was a great way of kind of finishing the week off with, you got to sweat up and a blowout, but it kind of helped you recover that little bit quicker. So that was an area that I hadn't really done much of. And even, I think, with Gaelic football and with probably a lot of sports, the window for getting fit is so small. It's about kind of managing it all year round, that you're not losing fitness. But I think you don't have time to be starting to build up an aerobic base in pre-season, that you should have it there. Whereas the way with lockdown and that, it was an opportunity to try and focus a little bit more on it, with running and with the bike sessions, that you could kind of start ramping it up then at a later date, closer to when games will be back.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that type of trend. We'd have mentioned it here a few times with Stephen Casey and some of our earlier stuff too. So like, I'd learned a lot of that from a brilliant book, actually, even if you want to do it kind of before or alongside your exos course, is Joel Jameson's book, Ultimate MMA Condition. It breaks down all that so well. Yeah, I'd learned an awful lot from that, and just how like the cardiac output is generally around kind of 115 to 130 beats per minute, depending on the way you're doing it. I find if I do it on a bike, I need to go a bit lower. If I'm running, I can go a little bit higher. You know, it depends on what your max heart rate is in a type of exercise. But I just find it so good for recovery between harder stuff. It takes a few weeks for it to really have a benefit. Like the first time you do it, you're just be like, just a bit bored after that. But like, you know, you find we were saying earlier, a good podcast, like the followers, to listen to while you're doing it. You put on Joe Rogan sometimes, you know, you'll find something to like help you pass the time a bit. But where it's really beneficial is when you go to do harder intervals later on the season or your small city games, your recovery between those is so much quicker. And the difference that makes when it comes to a game later on the season, that like the last 10 minutes of a game, when you're absolutely wrecked from like a series of high intensity stuff, you'll have so much more energy going into those 10 minutes because it's just been way easier to recover from the high intensity stuff throughout the whole game, that you just have less overall fatigue as the game goes on.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of something that it's one of those things that I feel that I need to kind of keep track of it more, to kind of know how you feel. It's the same with your supplements or your creatine. If you know, have you noticed anything? To be honest, I'm not sure. Jesus, I don't know. I've taken it, I'm not sure. Like, am I recovering quicker? Maybe I am. Did I put on a bit more weight, water weight retention? I was like, I think so. But you don't really pass, or in order to see the benefits in some of those things, you really have to be keeping a close eye on certain markers and things like that. Like, even coming back to the heart rate, one of the things that I would have picked up is the training, great session, the heart rate at night time, the HRV or the heart rate, the average heart rate at night might be that little bit higher after a tough training day. But Jesus, after 2 glasses of red wine, it jumps up by about 5-10 beats the next morning. Do you know, like, it's funny too, and you kind of think, Jesus, that's how drinking, imagine a session after a game, what it does to recovery. And you start to get a bit more of an appreciation for it. Obviously, when you're younger and fitter, these kind of things don't come into your mind, or doesn't really make as much of a difference. But when you're getting on a little bit, you start to pick up on these little things a bit more.
Like, I find after drinking, I'm not a drinker at all, I don't have a few, but my resting heart rate go from around 55 up to 70 the next morning. It's a huge jump.
Yeah, like I'd be sitting there at about 43, and like, if I could really get switching off going to bed, there's times maybe 39 could be the low, 38, but Jesus, a couple of drinks and it definitely up 54, 55 very easily, just jump. And you're kind of thinking, sure, that's nothing, that's not really a big jump, you know, it's still low. But then you're thinking, right, 10 beats per minute, how many hours sleep, how many minutes, and you're like, geez, your body's working a fair bit harder to do that when you should be sleeping.
Shane's resting heart rate there is probably down around 28 or something. He's a bit of a genetic freak aerobically.
Is he alive?
It's an expert level of procrastination, and I've just excelled through life. I've gained the ability to just control my aerobic system.
Oh, he blacked out.
That's it, yeah. Just breathing work when I should be working.
In fairness, that's a side of things too, like that aerobic and that side of things, like even probably the mental side of things, to be able to switch off. I suppose that's probably the way things are now at the moment. Is like, I'm having a few different podcasts and bits and pieces and chatting with students and that, and I tell them, like, since January, like, the journaling is something that I've kind of done a little bit more of, but trying to touch base with little habits and trying to create habits that work for me. Like, you know, Jesus, when I'm hydrated and when I'm kind of going for walks or exercise most days, I feel great. I was like, Jesus, monitoring how you feel. What makes you feel good? Well, going out, exercising, drinking lots of water, massive. Whereas there's days there where you're like, Jesus, that don't feel great. Why do you not feel great? Well, haven't done any exercises, you know, haven't got outside, haven't been drinking water, and you start to realise what works for you a little bit more. And the bit of journaling and jotting down a few things has definitely helped me get more of an appreciation for, Jesus, when you're up and about, why are you up and about? And then on the flip side, the opposite way, it's like, Jesus, I feel like shit today. Why is that? Because there's days there you go by and you're like, oh, just one of those days. But usually there's a few telltale signs that there's a reason for it. And a lot of the time it's as simple for me as didn't hydrate, you know, didn't get any exercise, shit sleep, and then there you go. You could have a couple of bad days or a bad day as a result. Like,
the journaling, do you have a few cues for that? Like, is there a few specific questions you ask, or is it just in general just a bit of a brain dump? Or we're not going to. You don't have to give us the deep insights now. Right?
No, like probably for me.
Page one.
No, like I kind of my one there. It's I think it's called Passion Planner. So I get loads of stickers. So you're actually planning out. It's in the timeline. It's in every journal. When it's no. That's a different one. But no, it's I like the template that's in it. You know, at the beginning there's a section for filling out your long-term goals, short-term goals, and then just, you know, self-maintenance, a section for that, and then how you felt at the end of the day, what went well, what didn't, and just your general mood. So you kind of takes you about 5 minutes in the morning and evening to fill it in, and sometimes I forgot that, skip a couple of days, whatever. But it kind of helped definitely with lockdown for me. Plan out your week, to-do list, and, you know, where you're going with the kind of long-term goals, if you're taking them off, as well as just your general mood.
Oh, that's interesting. I've been doing something reasonably similar. I started keeping a gratitude journal 2 or 3 times a week, just 3 things I'm grateful for, and like they can be so simple. Like, as in, like, I'm grateful I work on internet to have a call like this, and just little things. And as you do it, you just start to become more appreciative of so many small things, and just kind of stack up on each other.
Your day that you think was shit, it isn't actually that bad. That's what I find. You know, Jesus, it's a terrible day. I was like, well, was it? When you actually sit down and have a think, rather than scrolling through Instagram or Twitter and, oh, did you see such and such, what happened? It's like, oh, Jesus. And that's another thing that probably for me, that was another habit. Half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening. Try and get rid of the phone, and the phone's plugged in away from the bed. And that's been the best thing for me. My sleep has just, when it's not plugged in at the side of the bed, it's been brilliant. So something like that, it's so simple, but definitely for me has been a huge help.
And like, so a lot of that stuff that you've noticed yourself, have you, or how do you find bringing that into school? Because like, I find stuff like that, they're like I'm there 7 or 8 years now, particularly 5th and 6th years, like, oh, we're fed up listening to this lad. If I, like, you know, particularly, you know, the research I was doing last year, like, it gets a lot of like traction. People are like, this is so good. And if I went and said that to me 5th and 6th year, like, will you leave us alone? We're fed up listening to you. Do you ever find that hardish to balance? Like, I found this really good info. How do I deliver to these in a way that not like, oh, not more of the same?
Yeah, well, there's no more than this. I'm freaking off on tangents left, right and centre, and I'm looking back, I said, what was the question? Do you know, like, I could stand up and ramble at the top of a class and what's the homework, sir? I'm not sure myself. I'll put it up on Google Classroom. Do you know, like, there's times there where you go off and like this kind of thing, like having a chat about the actual journal with a guy this week one-on-one, and I've kind of found, do you know, that's something with the teaching. You try and teach as a whole or differentiate and all that kind of jazz, but like sometimes with the PE, especially with 6th years and 5th years at the moment, I find it's right, give them multiple choices. The gym's there, here's a program if you want it. basketball there, soccer there, you're non-contact, we're doing rondo or something, basketball hoops outside, off you go. And then you can float and have those conversations with people that it might actually hit home a little bit more, and maybe see the lads that just sit and don't want to do anything. What's the story? Have the chats. Whereas when it comes to first and second years, it's like just all going everywhere. It's a different story. You never really, they're not the ones that you kind of have those chats with. Whereas the likes of the Leave and Cert PE classes that you're going to have that have an interest in this. I know a few lads came to me and said they actually tried doing some of those sessions that I put up, and I suppose that's probably the side of things for myself, that I kind of have that you're playing at a decent level and they're interested in sport and they're interested in you or where you're coming from because you've played X, Y or Z, and that kind of helps. And it's an area that, you know, yourself as PE teachers, you kind of have a different dynamic or relationship with students, and I'm in an all boys school, so it's you can have those chats and approach different things that they have an interest in, or they might come to you a lot sooner than another teacher to ask you about those things.
It's probably easier to build that relationship too, and that like you can chat about Man City at the weekend or whoever like that. For, you know, if I really need to chat to this lad about such and such thing, I'll give it a couple of weeks, but I can spend the next bit of time using sport and fitness and stuff as our little barrier breaker to create a bit of a connection before I have to bring that up whenever. Yeah. And you've been doing a good bit of cooking with your classes there, you know, no students being in stuff. How have you found that? Is the engagement good, or how have you found them?
Yeah, like the more than anything, it's always a good story. We it's been good. Like the first years and second years was kind of where we targeted, because they're the ones that are interested. And then yesterday we kind of threw it out first the whole way up to fourth and got a few more. But started off basic enough. I don't know, was it scrambled eggs or something like that, and kind of just banana bread. How's your turnout? Mine was raw in the middle, so yeah, probably should have left it in a bit longer there. That's not my fault. Well, did the family enjoy it? No, burnt, and you're like, right. But in fairness, it was good old crack, and it was the same kind of crew of guys that were doing it. Give the thumbs up. Yeah, I'm going to do it this week, and it worked out great. Was it just before the midterm? I got right lads, there's your whatever we were doing. I'm trying to think what it was. Don't know what we were cooking, but he said, right, take a picture before you eat it, put it up, and put it up in the Google Classroom so we have it and can have a look and see how it's turned out. And then about an hour later, I went off and done whatever and came back and had this email: "Sir, I'm not allowed to cooking anymore." So, what's going on here now? This fella, he was at all of them. What's after happens? Everything all right? What's going on? The question mark. I said, I'm not allowed to do the cooking anymore. I left the gas on. House nearly went on fire. I was like, right, we'll put a stop to the cooking for a bit. It's like, so the last couple of ones is like, right lads, if you're using gas, make sure you turn off the hob, make sure the oven's off before you sit down to eat. So you're kind of like, trial and error.
It'll turn into a 10-minute safety intro.
A bit of cooking with the Carlow Miners last weekend, and I just had to keep, lads, please leave the cameras on. I just need to keep watching these nice smoke in the background that you're not noticing. Leave microphones on so I can hear a smoke alarm go off. We might have to ring someone nearby.
Oh, there's a few of that. It's like, sir, one of the guys was manning the comments or that. So if someone was kind of struggling behind, he was taking them. I said, a couple of lads falling way behind. I was like, oh, what do I do now? I said, what's going on? What are you after doing? Where do I put this butter? I said, that was supposed to be in the beginning. I said, oh shit, will it be still alright? I said, oh, pass no heat, don't need, it'll be grand. So yeah, look, I enjoy it. It's a different side of things, and like, and probably my mantra with the PE side of things at the moment is make it fun and competitive. And a lot of that, the cooking side of things, you're given skills that I probably wouldn't have had it at that age, and they're skills that they're going to have for the rest of their life, and that's what I think sport and PE can give students, that you don't have to be good at sport or have an interest in sport, but you can definitely be physically active, or the nutrition side of things. And I think between the the GA program, the leaders or future leaders program, and the new Leaving Cert PE course. It shows that you can have an interest in sport, but not be sporty or really good at it, but you can still have a career or a job in that, whether it be a nutritionist, a sports scientist, a statistician, like, you know, chairperson of a board or something like that. Like, there's such a scope for job opportunities there, if you have an interest in sport. Whereas I think in the past it was like, right, PE teacher or professional soccer player, or failed professional soccer player or AFL player, I'll be a PE teacher.
And even like, if you don't want a career in sport in any way, just eating healthier and being active, no matter what you do, it's going to make you better at that in some way.
Definitely. Like, I went through a stage. One of the Polar watches, the second or one that I upgraded, said, right, he had no interest in taking part in soccer. And you know, sometimes the soccer in the past, it's like indoor soccer, it's like murder ball, off you go, start swinging. And he said, right, could I go for a run? 100%, off you go. And I was able to show him where he'd come back with the watch. I'd sync it up to the phone. I said, Jesus, is that where you're after going? And he was able looking at it, and he'd a mad interest in it then, that, okay, running was kind of his thing. He was like, Jesus, look at the times he's running at there. You know, and it's sad to say that sometimes team sports are so pumped in Ireland and in every country, that the individual side of things, it's hard. It's a tough lifestyle, and it's tough to probably teach, especially a big class. But sometimes they're kind of pushed to the side a little bit. But when you see the amount of people during lockdown that got involved in running, getting out walking, cycling, there's a lot to be said for kind of giving a taster for that. Like, I know I see students doing a cycling course in school. I think we went down the country and doing cycling one of the greenways, and I can cycle, blah blah blah. 50 metres in, bang, it's no more than Tommy Tiernan's kid. He had to come to an abrupt end and into a ditch. It was his only way to stop. Like, he didn't know how to ride a bike. Like, just the kids now, you kind of take it for granted that they know how to run or they know how to cycle a bike, but it's gone to a stage now where they don't, and you kind of have to really go back to the basics.
Yeah, we cycled from Kilmacthomas to Waterford nearly every year with TYs, but the last time I went on, it was 3 girls who just had never cycled a bike before in their life. So one of them went down and ended up having to get a bus down. The other 2 girls just stayed at home out of fear today, and like, you know, long term, their chances of being active they're so limited.
I done the other way. I got a tandem bike and I fell on the back. Oh Lord, I was training that night. Now, it wasn't a good idea.
I should have brought along a trailer and pulled that.
But it's the truth, like, and I suppose that's the other side of things, that with those kind of things, you throw in team sports or soccer, Gaelic, basketball, rugby, all those different things, that if you don't have any sort of those basic fundamentals, how in God's name are you going to enjoy any of those sports? Like, I can't catch a ball, someone threw me the ball and hit me in the face. If I can't run, I can't kick a ball properly, or all those different things, like, they're not going to enjoy those sports if they don't have those basics. And that's something that I've kind of understood a bit more, probably from the teaching side of things, that you really do have to go back to the basics, that if you want to make it fun and competitive, going into a game of basketball isn't actually, let's play a 5v5. It's waste of time, lads. You know, all of you have a basketball here now. You're getting whatever number of touches. It's a lot more better and more fun for everyone than just going straight into a game.
Yeah, it's so important as well, I find, as well, give as much choice, particularly as you get older in the years in school, give them more choice around autonomy around what they're doing. Like, you set up kind of the station-based stuff for it, because a few of us want to do this, a few of us want to do whatever. Like, I always find I have a group now that I just really want to just go for a walk, and that is so good, from getting a break, getting fresh air, having a chance to even talk, which is so hard now as well, that they love just having a little bit of choice around what it is.
Exactly, and look, at sometimes you're like, oh Jesus, I'm not able to see everyone here now and blah blah blah, but like, you'd hope when they get to that stage that if you give that choice and build that little bit of trust, that you can kind of approach it from that area, like, and let them off and give them the autonomy.
Just to touch back on some of the cooking skills there, because like it suits now when they're at home, we're at home, we can set up cameras. You're probably doing it at a time of day where the kitchen isn't mad busy, but particularly in all boys school where I assume you don't have home economics, it can be limiting enough to teach skills like that when you don't actually have a kitchen, and it's often perceived as well like stereotypical that, well, cooking is for girls and not for boys. Thankfully recently, I assume mainly through like just people being more active and being more aware of physical activity, that cooking has now, and eating healthy has become more of a priority for boys. But giving them the skills to eat healthier, which is largely cooking and food sourcing based, it's hard enough logistically to manage in a lad's school.
Definitely, like, and you're kind of like, you're trying to, like, I've seen it probably in different schools or here, rugby schools where the blender set up or microwave set up where they can bring their own food and use them at the back of a canteen and different things like that. But you know, I think the big thing is that a lot of these lads are kind of what they're looking at on social media, from TikTok to Instagram, that, you know, right lads, we're going to the gym, oh, it's back day today. I was like, where are you going with your back day today? Like, do you know, oh, I was done legs yesterday. I was like, oh, such and such, and that kind of stuff wrecks my head. It's like, oh, why are you doing a bodybuilder training program? You're 15, like, and you're trying to, right, you have to strip back and try and go at it from a different angle. But definitely the nutrition side of things is something that, like, I wouldn't have had much knowledge on. It's something that, look at my nutrition, you see the pictures of stuff that goes up. I have a big sweet tooth, cup of tea and biscuits once it comes the evening time there. I love it, and it's definitely something that I need to cut out, but you cut back as best you can. But you're trying to, it's a balance. Everything is a balance, and like, there's times there with T-Wise, I brought in a couple of Nutri-Bullets and said, right lads, here we go, we're going to try and make a smoothie. There's frozen berries, there's yogurt, you can't go wrong. Jesus, some of them can. It's like, I don't know what colour, how it came out that colour, and I don't know what you put in, but that's disgusting. But it does give you a kind of an appreciation or learning curve, where they're coming from. Like, it's funny, it's a different dynamic that I have. There's students that I ended up teaching them from September to June, or September to May, and then I'm playing on the same Gaelic football team with them for the club in the summer. So you kind of have a different dynamic. You know, they're edgy with you, and then it's like they're calling you sir, and it's like, nah, you're alright. It's just whereas I enjoy that side of things, that you can kind of strike the balance a little bit with them, and they'll probably come and ask you different things. Like, I know a few of them had asked me before, oh, how do you make that smoothie, or what do you do with that? You know, I was looking at putting on size or whatever. It's like, look, just here, keep it simple, rather than getting caught up. I think there's that much information out there with training, with gym programs, with nutrition, with everything, that complicate everything. Like, you know, you don't have to, especially for them. I think for them to turn around and say they're doing backs today and back and triceps, and you're like, just keep it simple. You don't have to be counting your macros or whatever. Just try and get a bit more of a balance to things, goes a long way. And I think the big thing is you learn as you go. Like, if I knew now what or if I knew then what I know now, who knows?
Yeah. There's often a need to feel like you're doing the best or the most complicated or the most advanced version, whereas the absolute basics would generally do you the world of good.
Oh, exactly. And that's something that you see, for the sports science side of things. Like, right, single leg jumps with a dumbbell in your hand, and these floating ballistic kettlebells tied onto a band that'll swing and off a barbell and come back and hit you in the face, but it's good for power. Like, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
No, man, you're after attacking myself and Shane here today several times.
Well, I'm talking when you're talking to 15, 16 year olds now.
You pretty much are, Mike.
I'm talking now lower level. I'm talking right. What's the audience here now? There's no point in going with this kind of training. It's like, oh well, is this good for power? Is it just jump in the box there? Just do it, please.
That's it. It's the same when you were saying like with having the basic skills for like a football or hurling. It's the same with gym and strength work. Like if you can't squat properly, you can't do a single leg weighted squat properly. That's just like, it's common sense, but it happens so much with people trying to skip levels, especially like I'm sure with you, people have probably seen you train at kind of an elite level, and your students would be like, oh, I want to do what he's doing, without getting those basics in or without educating themselves on the fundamentals before they try to skip ahead.
Like, probably everyone wants a quick fix, no matter what it is, whether it be I need to lose weight, I need to put on muscle, I need to get faster. Everyone wants, okay, €30, there's a program, off you go, I'll send it out, I'll video check in, and there's your program. But like, consistent habits will give consistent performance, and that's kind of like, if you're consistently doing it, right, same with diet, 80-20 or whatever way you want to break it down, that if you're reasonably consistent over a long period of time, like, eventually you're going to get the reward. And I suppose probably delayed gratification is kind of the big thing, that if you do the work consistently now, that you're not going to get rewarded tomorrow. It could come in a month's time, it could come in 6 months' time, it could be 5 years. But if you're consistently doing it, you'd hope that in the long run you'd be ready. And you listen to all your motivational stuff and be ready, whatever, that you have to be ready when the opportunity comes. But how does that happen? It's just being consistent on a regular basis with the simple stuff, the basic stuff, and it's not rocket science, but it's very hard to be consistent for long periods of time at those kind of things. And that's why your top professionals or elite people, your Tom Brady's. Why is Tom Brady where he is still? Cristiano Ronaldo, Keith Earls hitting his top speed in his 30s, where he hadn't touched on it before then. It's like consistently doing the simple things right the whole time will eventually kind of get your results.
I'm sure if Keith Earls is listening, he's thrilled with the company you keep him in. Tom Brady, Cristiano Ronaldo and Keith Earls.
I tell you. It's funny too when you start talking, you're like, oh, there's the fella there. I'd only read that on him. I read it a while back, but I'd heard again there recently that he had hit a max speed or something that he hadn't before, and I'd seen it before with him and Zebo and who was the quickest and things like that. But like, how do you get quicker? How do you work on speed? Run quick. No, there must be more. It's like, no, run quick, hit your max speed, try and hit max speed, and then worry about all the other stuff. Like, it's, as much as it sounds stupid or simple, run as quick as you can, and it'll bring you, you hope that you might be able to make yourself a little bit quicker by working on small things. That jumping up on boxes and squat jumps and that, yes, it will help, but if you're not actually working on running quick, it's the more than, I think some of the studies there saying that hitting your max speed 2-3 times a week or something for injury prevention. If you're hitting your max speed, I think 2 or 3 times in a week, that you're not going to pick up those kind of injuries. I don't know what, that's a fairly ad hoc version of it, but that's something that I would have taken from it, that trying to hit at top speed 1 or 2 a week with my training, that when you do go back into a game, that you're not going to just like hit a max speed chasing someone in a game and then like, oh, that doesn't feel good.
No, that's all spot on. Like, I was just letting you off because you were making such good points there. I'm like, this is brilliant. Keep going. I'm going to make sure when I'm doing up the excerpt for this, I'm just pulling out that whole chunk there and saying, yeah, everyone, just listen to this bit. This is the perfect takeaway. Damien, you've been quiet today. Do you want to hop into a few questions there or anything?
No, nothing really. Just I just find it very interesting, like that you're taking on yourself to educate the lads in your school just on cooking and stuff. Because I come across a lot of underage lads who are at just either spectrum when it comes to the diet. They're either in the minute details of their macronutrients on MyFitnessPal, and they're weighing it out and still getting their parents to cook for them, but they're in this detail. They're like, I know everything I'm supposed to be doing. How do I improve on it? And they're able to give me a 10-15 minute spiel on why they eat like this 7 days a week. And you're like, all right, okay, do you enjoy the food you're eating? And they're like blown away, like, why is that the question you're asking me? And then I have other lads who are like at the other end who are like, what do you mean a bar of chocolate isn't okay for breakfast? And I'm like, well, it's that middle ground, that simplicity of just that approach to, I suppose, education, number one, and not just education, but the practical application of that education. I think it's something that's being missed. I feel like, do you see the same thing with the lads in school, with the lads you're involved in, or do you kind of think it's...
100%. Like, and you're looking at what's that video of fish and rice cakes, or what like, and it's so true that if you want it, that's what. But like, we went on a trip, myself and Kate, to Italy. We done Rome, Venice, Florence, and we done a cooking demo one of the days, where it brought us out to the food market, showed us where they get the food, pick up the food, back in, done the cooking, how to make pasta from scratch, how to your sauces from scratch, gnocchi, all the different things, and then your tiramisus and desserts. So that's probably the one I've cooked the most. But like what you said, it gives you an appreciation of good food and food cooked from scratch. Like, it's no more than some of the cooking things that I've done with the lads, that when you cook it from scratch, there's probably a greater understanding, greater appreciation for the food when you do it yourself, and then when you cook it from ingredients, the very basics. Like, I know we were chatting in school there recently about students say, can you cook? I said, yeah, I can cook. I said, what can you cook? I can cook a lasagna. I said, geez, that's impressive, though, the teacher said to him. I said, talk me through how you cook it. And he goes, you take off the wrapper, put it in the oven, 20 minutes, bosh. One more. I said, no, you didn't make that. That came made. Like, I said, I did, I put it in. I said, no, tell me how you can make it from scratch. Would you know how to, cook mince? Oh, fuck no. And then you're like, all right, these guys are heading off to college, you're heading after that. It's like, you're talking about life skills. I said, look, if you're able to cook X, Y, and Z, 3 or 4 things, that's a fair learning curve to have before heading out into the big bad world. Whereas I think most people off to college and you're ready to go, and then it's like, oh, right. Ma'am, how do you do this?
And that's the thing, is like, we're in an age of information. Like, you don't need to go more than a foot from your hand and you've the whole world of information there. But it's that application that it's not me looking at teachers or schools to pick up that there. But even amongst, say, if we look at the GA, where we're all members of the GA, like even at club level there, there's so much time and emphasis put into, like you mentioned, these kind of wild power exercises with 14 and 15-year-olds, when you could actually get a huge benefit just having a cookery class, even at the moment when there's literally nothing else going on, once a week, getting, just putting it out there and go, hey, we're going to do this week. And I feel like there's a little bit of a trick being missed. I'm hoping that things will catch up. So I suppose firstly, I just want to commend you on taking that on board with your own lads in school, because that's a massive thing there. I see it even with lads who play senior county football, and they could not boil an egg. And maybe for some, there was nobody there to show them. For others, it was always done for them. And those life skills really are they're huge for fellas and girls, across the board. So it's something I'd definitely like to see popping up a little bit more.
Yeah, and no, cheers. It's kind of like, it's very easy when they get to a certain age that, right, protein shake or something easy, protein bar. It's like, I had 3 protein bars today, and you're like, right, you kind of fall into that, and look, you learn from yourself. Like similar, myself went through a phase. My biggest problem would be, or from the nutrition side of things, would be the snacks. Trying to find healthy snacks that it's not your protein bar or whatever that you go to the whole time. Whereas, I think with a lot of it is. It's probably, you see it with young kids now, it's the fear of making mistakes or the fear of failing. There's nothing wrong with burning something, or it didn't work out, or it didn't taste great, and okay, next time I'll do this. Whereas I think you see it now, it's this culture, like your Twitter, sack him, politician gone, made a mistake, gone, everything. It's like you make a mistake, that's it, game over. But it's not like that. I think there's that kind of culture at the moment where, I don't know, if someone makes a mistake, it's like, right, get the pitchforks out and really go after them. Whereas, and that's, you look at kids now, that resilience or willingness to take risks and do things, and not within reason, obviously, but to try different things. I think that's something that it's going to be an area after all this lockdown and everything that everyone's kind of on eggshells a little bit and afraid to do anything. Whereas the cooking side of things is something that you really, like you mentioned it there, you've full spectrum of people that you're going to be dealing with, and the nutrition side of things that I would have found from working with Kate McDade or NutriKate, she's been brilliant. That there's probably psychology behind it, like, rather than sending in your food diaries into a big group of 30 lads, that okay, pair up in smaller groups, and right, John and Shane, you're together, you send what you have for breakfast to Shane and he'll send it back, and you can have a bit of banter there on a smaller scale. Whereas when you're talking into a big group, it's a different ball game. Like I remember when we first started with a team, and he took the picture and it was salmon with noodles and something else, and comment your picture and what it was that you had for dinner, and the spelling wasn't great or the autocorrect wasn't working, and it came in as Samoan fillet with noodles, and then it was like just there's querating and then Samoan, and then it was just full on litany of abuse lined at that fella, and then I think it kind of petered out. There wasn't as many pictures going in after a while, so you have to find what works best in those environments, that one-on-one, or even, I don't know, come dine with me or something like that, to be able to break it down that on a smaller scale, rather than up on the scales, right, what are you today, what are your skin folds, there's the skin fold list for everyone in the group, or whatever, how things would have been done in the past maybe. It's striking that balance that it's something that kind of you see from an adult point of view, but you can only imagine from a teenager or minors that you're working with, that the smaller scale or smaller groups and one-to-one stuff is where you get more joy.
And for a lot of them, they see the kind of either the finished piece, the finished product, or the very perfectly edited version of what somebody wants you to see, and that catches us. Like
I'm the same. Some of the times with some of the stuff I do, I'm kind of a bit like, should I be sticking up something? I'm sitting down with a cup of tea and something else. It's like, you only get the good side of things. It's like, oh Jesus, whatever you're eating, it's like the good stuff goes up. Like there's no picture of the pizza takeaway at a weekend or something like that,
or the lasagna that fell apart,
or the egg muffins that exploded. Just that we're conscious of your time, Mickey.
The eggs in the microwave. Oh Jesus!
No, just last thing I want to touch on there, because something that came to me was: have you ever brought particularly a younger team, an under 14 lads team, a school team, to a shop after a game and just been appalled at the stuff they buy? Like, because I'm in a girls' school, stop off, senior camogie team or junior camogie team, and they go in and they might like treat themselves to a yogurt or a hot chocolate and a banana, and you're like, oh, they're so conscious. And then one day I was at a Carl Development Squad and we stopped at a shop, and I was like they're coming out with like 4 packs of Maryland cookies, a 2-litre bottle of Coke. Is that for the whole bus? No, it's just mine. I could not believe it.
It's the sort of thing, it's like, right lads, you're going out, you're doing maths now, honours maths. I said, right, quadratic equation, the whole lot. I said, no, but give them a fiver and see how much they can get in a shop. They'll fucking be able to come out with their hands full. Like, you're like, they know the crack. I said, he'll get by in life, that fella. I said, 6 packets of Maryland biscuits for 99 cents.
Or the box of
crazy,
magic chocolate fingers and that, yeah.
Yeah, like, but you know, like, the find their way, like, and I suppose that's the side of things with a PE teacher, that you kind of try and lead by example. Like, you sit there and you drink your water and your banana, or bring your lunch with you, and you try and you do have to be seen to kind of lead by example, or that you have, especially probably play football or whatever, or background that you would have had, that you kind of have to lead by example and show. And look, there could be 2 or 3 lads on a team that are looking and see, and they might just kind of pick up something on the QT or see, and hopefully they're the younger ones that when it comes into 4th or 5th year, that they might have a couple of questions for you, or might pick up something and see, okay, do you know what, maybe that's a better way. But look, you let them. It's either that or not stop at a shop, and that's you're heading down the wrong line doing something like that.
No, Mickey, you've been absolutely brilliant with your time. If you want to give us your social media details to pick up those few extra followers, or if anyone wants to get in contact, if we end up having a dinner dance next year and people want to donate a menswear suit, where can they find you?
All you need is the shirt and tie, lads. Forget the slacks, the way they'll probably be in Zoom, so we'll get you a good deal there.
No, sound. Thanks a million.
No, I appreciate it. Enjoyed that, and you know, it's something that the three of you, it's a different dynamic. It's something 1-on-1 is always a little bit more intimate, but when you've 3 or 4 on a call like that, it gives a different dynamic and very enjoyable. So I appreciate having me on. So cheers for that.